Hi everybody. So I think we're live. So first of all, you can add anything into the chat over here. So I'm going to start talking soon. You can introduce yourself. You can just put in questions, comments, anything that you think important I should say, or questions on what I'm saying. I think there's a few seconds lag, so it may take it like 10 or 20 seconds till I see it, but I will try to keep an eye over there. So obviously we're in a very unprecedented scenario that brings about all sorts of everything from worry and anxiety. A lot of worry and anxiety. That there's obviously significant, it goes without saying, health crisis to the whole world, and also financial crisis coming with it as well. And these different dimensions raise lots of questions for people. I know over the past few weeks already, I've often been asked questions or asked to speak about it. You know, something of this scale, something this enormous, this unprecedented within almost any living person's lives. This level of crisis. What do we say? Well, where's God in this? What are we meant to be doing? So I'm going to make life a drop easy in terms of the where's God in it, just to say, I hope this doesn't, I know I was going to say this doesn't disappoint anybody, but I'm not one of those blessed with prophecy. I have seen comments of various people online who seem to have some kind of understanding of God's plan here. I'm not blessed to be one of them, not 1000% convinced that anybody out there really is. And so trying to understand what God's trying to do with this is not necessarily the right question, or a question we're yet going to be capable of answering. But that doesn't mean that we can't talk about what we can be doing about it. And that ranges from the obvious, which is the things that we are doing about it, to the slightly less obvious. And obviously the most obvious, I'll just say it, but it goes without saying, it is even the very act of quarantining that we're doing right now. Even no more than that is something absolutely critical, but also absolutely very special. It's obvious that we got to take all the warnings incredibly seriously. But it's also, I think it was the president of Harvard University sent out an email about a week or so ago. Somebody forwarded it to me. I don't actually who the president is right now. I'm so embarrassed to say, but I don't. And he started by saying, quoting the Talmud, and the Talmud says he who saves a life is as if they've saved the world. And he wrote to the students in Harvard that we will never know how many lives we're saving by the sacrifices that we're making, by staying isolated, with all the anxiety and problems it comes with the financial collapse it comes with. But let's not forget, and this is very, very important before we even get into what we want to talk about here, let's not forget the amount of lives we're saving by doing this, and how seriously we've got to take it. The synagogues closing, everything, it's there to save human lives, and it is saving human lives. And we should understand that, and we should tell that if we're at home with our children, tell them that, and how important and special they should feel in doing all of this, and of course how seriously we have to take it, no matter how difficult it goes. But I want to talk more broadly as well, because so many people are going through different types of anxiety here. And I'm talking about whether it's a phone call with somebody who's been a supporter of our work at AISH who's now facing financial ruin, somebody else who's got an elderly relative and they're not sure whether they should or shouldn't be visiting them, and so on, all these kind of challenges that we're all facing. Others who are stuck at home now with children, expecting to be teachers and continue their jobs and be parents, and all the stresses that come with that. Others who are isolated, alone, and spending a Shabbat with nobody. All these different aspects that are coming together. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to give an overall framework, which is, we see this again and again in Jewish thought, that whenever a crisis hits, there are three possible ways of responding. The most instinctive is to be stressed and crushed. Crushed can mean many things. It can mean everything from falling apart to being overwhelmed by anxiety and fear. It's very normal, and if the person's feeling that, then it's normal. I'm going to talk about that at one point. Number two is to be able to get through, to achieve calm, to be able to survive this and come through the other side. That's already a significant level, and we'll talk a bit about that too. But number three is higher than all of that. That's the ability to be able to grow and achieve actual real greatness for ourselves and for those around us. And I'm going to talk about that as well. So let's start with the first one. First thing I think to be really aware of is that fear and anxiety are such normal parts. This, first of all, because there really is a threat in the world, that we cannot belittle in any sense. Though, just in London, just this last weekend in the community, we lost a very special man. And I'm sure, statistically speaking, please God, it shouldn't happen, but he's not going to be the last one. and we are going to probably all know somebody who might not make it through. If it's even if it's 1 in 1,000 people, we know 1,000 people. So whatever the number will end up being, the chances are that we will directly know, we'll know people who know people, and there will be painful moments with this. That said, the other point, though, however, is that the human brain is designed it does have a very deep and primal program in it, that when situations are new or different, it produces an anxiety and fear around them. That's actually one of the best survival mechanisms that we actually have. The reason is, if you imagine being back in the African savannah, and humans come across a new animal they've never seen before, and curiosity wants to go over, the brain says, whoa, different situation, be afraid. Or you come across a new tribe of people, brain says, be afraid. That fear saves us so many times. In a situation like the present, it can produce exaggerated levels of anxiety and fear. And just being aware of that, this is totally unprecedented for us on every level. We haven't lived through a health threat like this. We haven't lived through isolation. Very few human beings, except those who have immense health problems, have really experienced isolation and all the problems that come with it. We just don't know how long this is going on for, and that raises its own questions. There's economic anxiety. There's so much anxiety all over, but really the brain is going to exaggerate that fear. And I think it's worth us being aware of that. That it's not to belittle the threats that exist, but let's also understand and expect that within us and within people around us are going to be levels of fear that are beyond the actual threat that it presents, big though that threat is. And what that does mean, amongst other things, is that we shouldn't be afraid. If we have certain anxiety, we shouldn't be afraid if people around us do. We should expect it. But at the same time, just becoming aware of that and explaining that to people around us is also important. It is important. And I'd say more than that, being a voice of calm in this situation is really important, especially, again, if we're trapped at home, especially with young people, but also the elderly. People pick up on each other's fears. People pick up on each other's calm. And when we realize the brain is just doing this, and we're able to step back and say, okay, there is a threat out there. My brain is getting a little bit more anxious than it needs to. Let me just take a step back. I would say the good news, I don't want to belittle it again in any way at all. The good news is, please God, September, December, by some point, we are going to be on the other side of this. And the vast, vast, vast majority of humanity will be there. Again, not to belittle the pain that will be there for losing those who we love. Again, not at all, God forbid. But the vast majority will be there on the other side. I think I've just cut out there. 1 second. No, here I am still. Sorry, apologies. The vast majority will be there on the other side. The financial ruin may be there for many as well. But judging by past, within 5 years, 10 years, we will actually be on the other side of all of this. And that's something we should also be, at least those who are healthy around us, we should be a voice of calm and some reassurance as well, without in any way belittling it, without in any way diminishing the threat that is there, and the importance of doing all that we can to keep ourselves and everyone around us, the elderly, the vulnerable, the immunosuppressed and so on, safe, and that means avoiding social contact. But just in terms of being able to exude calm, that is something that is important. But we want to also talk about more than just that, and that's really the ability to rise up in a scenario like this and help. And really, it's like in the normal life, we kind of depend upon the community and the noise of the wide world, just the busyness of work and this and that to get us through. That's moving away. And it's a bit like being on the battlefield, where all of a sudden the private becomes an officer and suddenly becomes a general. And that's really what I think, in a way, we're kind of being tested. We kind of need to be right now for those around us. It's a moment for us to rise up and tap into a wellspring of greatness. And I'm going to talk about the concentric circles of how that works. And even when I use those words, I spoke recently to somebody and they said, well, are we a generation that can bring out greatness? We know that many of us have learned stories of crises in the past, and crises in human history bring out the worst in people, but they also bring out the best in people. Anyone who's been studied at all anything like the Holocaust, obviously, but if you've been to Poland, so we hear the horrors and the horrors and the horrors, but then you hear these momentary heroic stories of the person in the camp who somehow was able to give bread to somebody else, and you think, wow, would I be able to do that in that situation? And we don't know. We've never been tested, but we do know that there is a wellspring of human greatness that lives within all of us. There really, really is. And we normally don't believe it. We're like, does our generation really have that type of greatness? You hear about people in the Blitz who opened their doors to strangers, shared food and clothing and everything. Would we have that greatness? And I think the answer is we actually do. Every human does. It's the godly spirit within us. In Judaism, we call it the soul. It's there within all of us. You can call it whatever you want, but it's the ability to rise and genuinely be great in moments like this. The reason we don't believe we have it is because in normal, everyday, fast-paced, materialistic life, we don't generally access it. It's not generally part of our mode. It's drowned out. But in moments like this, when everything else just goes silent, and we're face to face with the gravity of the situation, and we can sort of lift ourselves out of the fear and the self-pity and find something within us, a resource to not just lift ourselves, but lift others around us. It's there. I think that resource is really, really there, and we can access it. And we can manifest it not just in ourselves, but in others around us. I'm going to talk about how to do that, but I don't know if you saw, I made a little video that I think's gone out there now online, and I spoke at how one of the lessons we can learn from the virus is just what level of contact humans and what level of impact that human contact has, one human from another. Literally, it's as simple as a bat. It may be as simple as, we don't know for sure, a bat in a market in Wuhan that landed and bit a chicken when it was alive or dead, and somebody didn't cook it properly, and that person sneezed or shook someone's hand. And you think the virus can only move 2 meters at a time. It really can't go very far. And the world's 25,000 miles and it's 7 billion people. It's going to take years before it impacts us here. And the answer is no, it takes weeks. And the reason is because the world is so interconnected. You relate to one person, they connect to another person, and a few minutes later it's gone to thousands of people, and then one of them's gone on a plane, and it moves so far around the world. But the same thing is true also for areas of emotional attitudes. The human brain actually picks up from one another, a bit like a virus. Attitudes, ideas are quite infectious. Our neurons shape themselves around the neurons of people that we're looking at. So if somebody's positive or somebody's fearful, it makes us fearful, and that spreads virally too. If somebody's calm, it helps us to become calm, and we being calm helps others become calm. If someone's positive, adding holiness, adding goodness, these things also spread. And that's not just true for this crisis. That's going to be true way beyond that. A lesson to learn, which which I already spoke about in that video, is just that from now on, let's think about each interaction and how viral it can go, and that our positivity, a little bit of holiness or goodness or kindness, can literally go viral, and within 6 or 7 weeks be everywhere, affect all 7 billion people on the planet. But in the shorter term, that's going to be in concentric circles, starting with ourselves, moving to those we might be sharing the home with, typically family, and moving outwards to the community, and finally outwards to the world. And I'm going to talk now about each of these concentric circles. First, ourselves. Whatever our ability to give people in the home now or people in the wider world will depend a little bit on our own sanity, our own health, our own, call it whatever we want to call it, spirituality, mental health, everything together. And therefore, even if we're now in a very, very busy home, perhaps a home preparing for Pesach with children all over and tensions and stresses and everything, even if we're in one of those scenarios, we shouldn't feel guilty about needing to go aside in a room for a few minutes a day. Jewishly, prayer obviously is a very powerful thing to do. Then meditation is a good thing to do, and we shouldn't feel guilty about it, because it's actually going to be for everybody's betterment. We just even as simple an exercise as taking 10 minutes out in the middle of craziness, letting everyone know we're going to do it, go into a side room, shut their eyes, and just God, what would you like me to do now? And just listen. It's not even talking mystically or prophetically. We all have very deep, beautiful voices within us. We call it the soul, call it whatever you want, but it can talk within us and give us a lot of wisdom if we just let it calm and listen and put ourselves into the right mindset to go out there and care about the others around us. So that's ourselves. We should not neglect looking after ourselves in this situation. It's not being selfish. It's actually an important energy source through which we can give to others. But the second is now those around us. So again, stress levels and everything, but there's going to be enormous opportunities. Let's take the most standard example, family, but it might also be flatmates or others that we share our home with. Those people are going to be in need of us right now, and we have the tremendous ability to not just calm them if they're children and with all the chaos and everything going on, but there'll be opportunities to really do giving on 2 levels. Level 1 is literally think about every single person in proximity. What are 2 nice things I can do for them today? With all the crazies, what are 2 nice things? Also things like, we talk about being locked down as negative, but we all know as Jews who've ever celebrated Shabbat, sitting together is so powerful. Having phones off is so powerful. Obviously not all the holiness of Shabbat, but every day of the week now, or a few days a week, we could try and have a family meal where we all sit together, phones off, and spend real quality time with one another and use those opportunities. So there's going to be enormous opportunities now for us to give to those around us, and for us to help them, right, and to lift them. But even more than that, also the opportunity together as a family to care about those further afield. So, for example, we may have on our street people who can't shop, and we can go, we're not yet in isolation, or we're in isolation, they're not. There's going to be, I think we're all going to need each other at different points now over the next few weeks. We're all going to take it in turns to be in isolation. But if we're not, and we're able to go shopping, and they need something or something delivered to them, we can do that, and we can have our children involved in that too. There's been some really beautiful initiatives all over. I know Gift, an organization I happen to be close to, is doing remarkable things with pairing elderly people or isolated people up with young people who can just, and families who can literally, whether it's our own relatives or people we know, and we can just spend time with them on Zoom, on all sorts of other media that we can spend time with them and reach out to them, or even strangers. Right now, everybody's in it together, and there's almost no one out there who's too much of a stranger who won't appreciate a call. There's Jewish Care, for example, in England, and others around the world that are looking to set people up. And I don't know what each charity is doing, but it's changing all the time. But there'll be opportunities all the time for us to do things for others. A doctor suggested to me recently on a Facebook post, making a certain type of visor can be made at home for certain health workers, for anesthesiologists. There's just so many opportunities that we cannot just do ourselves, but involve our children and family in, and help them not just to manage this crisis, but actually to become givers. And that's something remarkable. The more we're focused on how difficult it is for us and those around us, the more difficult it will be. But the more we focus on bringing out in ourselves and those around us giving, and there'll be so many opportunities to do so, the more we'll all touch greatness, and the more we'll all be able to feel and be greater people long after this virus has gone. In terms of actually reaching out for help, and I've said this to many people, nobody should feel at all embarrassed to do so. I know maybe it's more of a British attitude than other places, but there is almost a shame in reaching out, but everybody knows that we all need each other right now. So if you're stuck at home and people haven't noticed, don't feel embarrassed to reach out or make a little WhatsApp group or something, stuck, is there anyone who can help me out? Again, they'll call upon us pretty soon afterwards too. So we've spoken about looking after ourselves, we've spoken about our family and home around us, and we're speaking also about thinking of the community around as well. Obviously, this is also something that binds us in an even deeper way, perhaps to the whole of humanity. And I really think there's going to be a different type of positivity as well, which is simply this: that probably for the first time in history, probably for the first time in human history, literally human history, where every single human being on planet Earth pretty much can recognize that we're all actually in this together, can recognize maybe for the first time that what this virus threatens is our common humanity. The reason I'm threatened, and so somebody in China, and so somebody of different faith, and so somebody different part of the globe who we'd never meet, the reason we're all threatened is because we have our human bodies in common. And some of those bodies are weaker than others, some are in greater threat. But the fact is it can pass from me onwards means I better make sure not to get it, so in order not to transmit it. Or if I've got it, I better be in isolation in order not to transmit it, because of what we have in common. Our grandparents are as threatened as the Chinese person's grandparents, as the Brazilian person's grandparents, as the Iranian person's grandparents, as the South African person's grandparents, because of the humanity that we have in common. In every great crisis in the world, it's usually been one lot of humans against another, or one group of people on the earth who feel threatened. Here we're literally all in this together, and that makes us understand and realize the depth of the common humanity that we have. And that commonness is again going to be something that, please God, will long outlive this crisis as well. So I want to just make sort of some finishing remarks, but again, happy to any questions you want to put down. I haven't seen any questions right now, which maybe just I'm looking at the wrong place, so I can't see it. But if there are questions or comments, please feel free to put them in. What I want to say really is a few things, sort of by way of bringing this to conclusion. Yes, it certainly is a real threat on so many levels, and we've got to do a lot of praying and helping, A, by isolating, B, by everything we can do to look after others, but also bring out the greatness in ourselves and others. All of that said, not to belittle remotely, but just to remember that we are going to end up on the other side of this. Please God, the vast majority of us are. There's going to be a lot of people who need our help during the crisis and after the crisis. Please God, all those our loved ones will be on the other side. Maybe not all of them will quite make it, and that will be a pain that will stay forever afterwards. But for so much of the world, we're going to make it on the other side. And what can last out of this, lessons that we can learn, that we can take with us absolutely forever. Number one is the vulnerability and fragility of humanity and the whole planet. Maybe we've known it in our heads, sort of, but I don't think any of us will ever keep Yom Kippur exactly the same when we get to those moments that pray to God to remove from us certain issues in the year ahead, including Mageifa, plague. I know many people in explanatory services would ask me, how do we interpret that? And I'd say, well, there's still illnesses in the world today, obviously, but it's not going to mean the same again. We now understand perhaps more than ever just how fragile and how vulnerable and how fortunate we've been and blessed we've been that this hasn't happened for the last 100 years. But humanity lives with fragility and vulnerability all the time. Our entire economy can come crashing. Everything we take for granted can come crashing. And that's, by the way, quite healthy. It's quite healthy sometimes to have that humility and that recognition, and it will change our relationship with God probably forever after. The second is to recognize, and probably ever after, we will now know this lesson, that materialism and all the goods that we have in the world are tremendous blessings, but we can actually live without them. That doesn't mean, when it all returns to normal, and please God, the financial world eventually recovers, however long that will take, and we do go back to having large weddings and luxuries, okay, but let's always remember we could actually live without them. We could remember the day when a toilet roll and a packet of pasta meant so much to us. And, we think that's back in the ancient past. Well, it's with us right now in the 21st century. And that will be something wonderful that we've taken out of this, and that our children, please God, will remember forever. It will make us more humble people, more grateful people. Please God, it should make us better forever. The third is to realize that we're going to discover a goodness within us and a commonality within us that, please God, should be lessons we imbue and imbibe that stay with us forever. That we learn what we have in common is so much greater than anything else. That we learn that we're not just this little body, because this body can be ill and isolated, but I need the whole world out there and can connect. And it's when I start deepening and thinking about, I look after myself to give to others, and start thinking about how we as a family can connect to one another and then give out there to the community. And we as a community can look after our most vulnerable. And we as a humanity can pray together and think together and feel together. All of these things can last far, far longer than this virus. The beauty that it can bring out within us, please God, in the next few weeks will be something that stays with us forever. The final point I'm just going to make over here, and again, any comments or questions, please feel free to put in. Unless I've missed some, I don't see any. And I hope that's because these words are self-evident enough and speaking, but happy to take questions whenever you put them down. But also, is that what I'd say is that we recognize forever after just how interconnected we are and how much everything we do can lift and impact everybody else. And so we pray that everyone should be healthy, really everyone should be healthy, and this should pass as soon as possible, and everyone's finances should be stable, and all of this should be there. But let's also understand, there was one, I apologize, I'm in the middle of a concluding thing, but the one thing I just did want to say, because whenever you say inspiring things or create beautiful visions, some people feel, oh no, very inspired to go out to their family the next day and it's all falling apart, and this one's got a headache falling and this one's ill, and this tension and stress, and then they're watching on a WhatsApp group or a Facebook some other family that's so incredibly caring and giving and doing beautiful, and then, I'm a total failure. We're not failures. We're really, really, really not failures if we don't have a perfect travel through this. It is going to be difficult. There's going to be stressful moments and challenging moments and difficult moments all around, and we don't expect perfection. These are just ideas of what to try to strive for. But if we can, then please God, we should all be healthy and should all be financially okay. But as well as all of that, let's also pray that we're able to access the greatness within us and stimulate others to do so too, and virally create positivity that moves in concentric circles from us to those in our homes, to those in the street, to the whole world around us. And that forever after, the greatness that does come out should long, long, long outlast this virus, which should be short and gone soon. And that we learn to have a greater and better humanity and a better people ourselves. That's all my words finished. I will stay online if there's any questions or any comments that appear in the feed. Again, I apologize if I can't see anything in the feed, and there has been. But that's it from me. And really, everyone should just be well, healthy, and good. Okay, like I said, I can't see anything in the feed, so I apologize if you've posted and it's not coming up on my screen. I'm really sorry. But other than that, I'm just going to, I hope these words have been of value. I hope they've been of help. And if I do see things in the comment later, or someone shows me where I've missed them, then then I'll try to respond separately to this. Otherwise, otherwise, what I'm just going to say is just reiterate those points, just in a quick summary, that please God, we shouldn't be crushed by this. Please God, we should be able to be more than calm. We should actually be able to access greatness in the concentric circles and bring so much goodness to the world. Blessings to you, to all your family, to all Israel, to all mankind, to the whole world, both financially and especially health. Okay, so I have seen a question. What should we tell our kids why Hashem is doing this? Well, I think assuming, again, I'm making the assumption that we're not talking in a family where necessarily somebody's passed away. I would say we don't know why Hashem's doing it, but we know what Hashem wants from us in this situation. He wants us to think about how we could give to those around us. Think about that. And as Hashem wants you to try and do, right, to our children is can you let's think together about good things we can do in this situation, right? Can you help mommy? Can you help daddy? If they're a bit older, can you get involved with helping others out there? If they're older siblings, right? In other words, we never know why Hashem does things. We know Hashem loves us. We don't know why he does those things, but we do know what he wants from us is to bring out goodness. I would talk to children about that. I would also be very calm with children. It's very important, not if we're on the phone and children are around, not to be talking in panicking terms, not to be, we can flippantly quote lots of statistics that scare us and scare others around us. And the reason for that is because partly we're anxious, and that's one way we deal with an anxiety. When children are around, just be calm. You'll be okay. You're not in danger. We're staying at home. And you can tell children, by the way, one of the reasons we're staying at home is to protect other people in the world. And it's such a great mitzvah. It's such a wonderful thing you're doing by staying at home, even though it's very difficult for you. Such a wonderful thing you're doing. You're saving lives all the time. Saving and if they can't grasp that, or that would exude fear, then again, just talk about, we don't really know why Hashem's doing these things, but we know that we can all do so many good things right now, and Hashem's so proud of you, and those sorts of things. I also think one of the things generally with raising children, and true in all life, is it's not about the short game. It's not about what's happening in the next few days or weeks. We have to just create and if we're thinking after one, oh my goodness, my kids are running mayhem and riot and all my attempts to be calm are failing, don't worry, we're playing the long game here. The only question as parents that we have to worry about is how will they be in 5 years' time. And so we don't need to panic if things are going a little bit wrong as well. But we do our best. We stay calm. We reassure them. We don't have to understand what Hashem's doing to know the things that he can want from us in this particular situation. I hope that answers your question, Avi. Any other questions, any other comments people want to put into, What can we do to avoid getting sucked into the constant news, which is important to follow as it affects us, but can be very draining, create panic? I believe that the more reactive we are in this situation, the more we're just going to be sucked into it all. I think, it's healthy to have maybe 2 points in the day where we look at the news, and the rest of the day, let's think of so many productive things we can be doing. Unless we proactively build our own schedules. That's another thing, by the way, I didn't mention it earlier, but it is important. I mentioned in a Facebook post I put out there, and in a number of shiurim, planning the day ahead is really, really important. So we don't get into these amorphous days, but more importantly, especially if we're at home with others, and again, this is less true even if you're isolated at home by yourself, but certainly if you're at home with others, one of the most important things is coordinating timetables. Let's give a scenario. You got parents with children, or even flatmates, right? But let's take parents with children. And one parent was planning at 10:30 to be on an important business call. The business desperately needs things. They have to be on a call. Another parent was planning on going out doing shopping at that particular point. One kid's got a class at that time. Now you've got chaos, bedlam, and everyone screaming at each other. All it needed was the night before to just sit down and say, what are your key moments and needs in the day? What are mine? Align them a little bit. So planning our day is important. Look, learning Torah, there's now endless opportunities. Doing kindness for others, there's endless opportunities. I would say let's personally limit the news to twice a day. We generally won't need it much more than twice a day. It's not a time to I think it just builds anxiety, as you say, and there's so many productive things that we can be doing, so many things we can be doing to build ourselves and to build those around us, to give out greatness to those around us. I personally haven't found a lot of benefit in staying tuned into the news the whole time, but I found a lot of benefit in thinking of what I could do for myself and those around me and others out there. We can teach, we can learn. One of the great blessings, we all know about the wrongs of social media and the ills of social media, but social media is also a gift God's given us. Look, imagine this crisis had happened 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We would be in a much more difficult world now. We would really, really be in a world where people's mental health would now be so badly thrown. The isolation would be so deep and so real. I'll give you an example of a friend of mine who did something really beautiful. They knew about an elderly person. They delivered who was isolated, who could only speak on the phone, hadn't used technology. They delivered with gloves and everything, an iPad to their house. They on the phone taught them how to use it, right? They left out the door, the person was isolated, took it in. They taught them how to use it, and they're FaceTiming them. So that's an example. There's so many productive things we can be doing, so many things we can do now to give. So I would say, yeah, it's a very right question. I don't think we should just be passively being sucked in. It's not great for us. Human anxiety feeds off each other. News works, but not maliciously. I think the media has been responsible in this outcry. I'm not blaming God for it at all, but news feeds anxiety, and it's driven by anxiety. And so I think we do need to think carefully about switching off. We've heard it twice a day. We know everything we need to know. If the government ups the quarantine level, twice a day is enough to know about it. That's all. And any other news we need to know, we'll find out. And the rest of the time, just think about all the productive things we can be doing. And again, we're not saints. If somebody needs to waste a bit of time, of course, I'm not trying to. But there is really a greatness that can come out of us. And I hope that answers your question. Any other questions or comments people want to put into the feed over there? Okay, so again, I'll finish as I finished before then. If there's nothing else that people want to I really, really hope this has been helpful for people in terms of perspective. And I really hope that we all trust ourselves, that we really are able to bring out the goodness and greatness within us. I think we can, and I think we can bring out not just in ourselves, but remember, whether it's in our own homes, whether it's in Facebook interaction, whether it's in posting, whether it's in all these things. Last thing I did want to say, I'm so sorry, and I keep thinking of things, is I saw a little bit. I went on Facebook myself to post something on Friday, and I noticed different types of posts. It causes anxiety. There's a lot of anger people get against each other as well at this time. Let's understand we're all learning together. We're really all learning together. A little bit of patience and without belittling those who are saying it's really serious. You're right to say it's really serious. We're right to point it out, without having to shame others, without having to knock others, but to try and get the message out there is really, really important. It's true. But at the same time, always think, what can I positively give? What positive messages? So again, the example I gave earlier, telling all those who are struggling with this isolation, but think how great you're being. Just think how many lives you're saving. Always think of the positive in this. And positivity really, really genuinely is infectious. It really, really is. And there's so many opportunities we have to gain positivity and give positivity. Let's really let's do that. And again, let's pray for all those who are unwell currently. Pray for all those who are currently well but are in risk of becoming unwell. Pray for all those who are financially facing ruin or real deep setbacks. And pray that we can get through this together, and that the greatness that comes out will long outlast this virus. That through all the goodness that we do, we should reach the day when all this is past. When all death is gone. Okay, so sorry, another question. Sorry, I keep being about to finish it. Okay, yeah, it's fine now. I'm happy to stay on much longer, don't worry. How should we approach people who are approaching the crisis differently, i.e. less seriously or much more seriously? Less seriously is more of a threat than more seriously. Less seriously, I would say, with patience, with love, with understanding of why so many people. Look, just now there was in Snowdon, they were talking in Snowdon, it was like a camp, it was like our bank holiday. But I understand lots of people probably thought Snowdon's empty, let me just go there, I want to get out of the house. It doesn't mean they did the right thing. There might be different people are cottoning on at different paces. I would say we do have to make the point to them, if they, without scaring them, those who are old enough and mature enough to understand this, who have responsibility, who aren't being isolated, we need to tell them it's real. This is life and death. If doctors it's legitimate to show people the post from a doctor in the hospital saying, guys, this kills. Again, we're not accusing them of being murderers, God forbid. I think I've seen that on post. Of course, that's not. But at the same time, let's understand our actions really, really, really have consequences. Really, really, really. There are people who can die from being too much socially connected in interaction right now. In fact, all social action is risky right at this moment. And therefore, we absolutely have to stay away from this. We know how far we go in Pikuach Nefesh. If the rabbis are said to shut shuls, if the doctors are saying, if the government's saying, the government is not voluntarily shutting the economy down because it thinks it's taking an extra precaution. It understands the severity of shutting the economy down. There'll be consequences for a long time to come, massive ones, amongst which will be most governments of the world will probably end up being voted out of power. They all know that and understand that. They're doing it because there really, 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 really is a health risk. And you just communicate that to people. That's what I would say to those approaching it less seriously. I don't know what more seriously would mean. I don't know what, maybe if they're too afraid or scared. So again, it depends who we're talking about. If you're talking about somebody who is vulnerable, who's scared, we should just be there for them. If they're religious, then we should talk about bitachon. And bitachon doesn't mean trusting that, although there is a, bitachon and prayer is very important. But also, let's understand, bitachon doesn't just mean trusting that God will do what we want God to do, but ultimately, if it's somebody who's, let's say they do have faith, they do have emunah, they do have bitachon, they do have religiosity, and they're afraid for their own health, let's help them. I'd say the most important thing for somebody who's afraid is help them to be isolated in the most unisolated way possible. Let's make sure there's somebody getting them food. Let's make sure they don't need to leave the house. Let's make sure that we're in social contact with them as much as we possibly can be. Let's think of as many ways to arrange for them. And let's reassure them, again, assuming they already have faith and trust, that God loves them, and it is, and talk to them very openly about their fears. Let people talk to us about their fears, especially if we're in a calm, good place. I would not worry about that. So if that's what you mean by people taking it more seriously, but I'm not sure other than that what you meant by much more seriously. But if they're just panicking, they're a very regular, healthy person, and they're in a state of panic, again, some people do need mental health professionals and can benefit from a bit of counseling and therapy right now. And there's nothing wrong with encouraging people who are suffering irrational anxiety levels. There's nothing wrong. It's perfectly normal for a human to have that. If we can't calm the person down ourselves, then let's encourage them. There's a lot of therapists doing sessions now online. There's a lot of possibilities of people who are more professional they could talk to, or let's just be a listening ear, a calm listening ear to the people on the other end. I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question over there. I don't know which Rubenstein you are. It just says S. Rubenstein, but I hope that answers your question. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions that people wanted to put up or deal with? I keep being at the moment I'm about to say goodbye and we'll bless everyone that should be healthy and well. And then all of a sudden, another question, another topic emerges. Again, happy to follow yours. I've said I'm willing to be on for as much as 45 minutes. So in theory, we have another 8 minutes to go, but I don't need to waffle for the sake of it. So if there's no more questions I see, then I will end as I was going to end before, just by giving everyone a blessing that we should all pray for one another, that the health and well-being, we should all do whatever it takes to keep the world around us safe and secure. But let's not forget also to find that wellspring of greatness and goodness that should please God outlast all of this. And as I was going to say, that goodness should be something that really makes the world a better place forever, that really, really rocks ourselves, our families, and brings out a goodness, a humility, an amaterialism, a love of other, a greatness that we've touched within ourselves and those around us, that will be something that will last long after the effects of this are gone, and bring us all the way to the Messianic era, please God, that we should be parts of it. So I bless everyone. Oh, is Hashem, he doesn't like how we do things like minyanim now? I'm sorry, I can't. Is Hashem, he doesn't like how we do things like minyanim now? Are you asking the question, is Hashem telling us he doesn't like our minyanim, that's why he's shutting them down? Is that what you're saying? Are we meant to read this as a sign from heaven that the way we pray generally is not being good enough? I would tell you the problem with reading signs from heaven, and there are great rabbis who have books on how to read them. They generally are harder to apply the bigger the crisis is. The reason is because let's just use the way the Ramchal talks about, there's the Hanagas HaMishpat, there is such a thing as God interacting with us all the time, but there's also Hanagas HaYichud, massive historical forces that are driving the world in ways that are not necessarily instantly responsive to things going on. So to say that we know why God does something, I don't think we can. And just even say God doesn't like our prayer, I don't think that's necessarily would be something we could learn from here. Of course, can we learn to pray better? Of course, praying alone. Let me tell you one of the benefits of praying alone or praying Shabbat alone. When you go to shul, typically one of the things we do is we rely on the community to lift us. There's a nice chazan, there's a big rabbi. When we pray alone, we have to become the whole community. For our families or for ourselves, we have to do that. We take the prayer of the Jewish people, because the Siddur is not the prayer of ourselves as individuals. We can talk to God all day. It's the prayer of the entire Jewish people over all of time. And we can become that mouthpiece, and we have to be the community. Each one of us becomes the community. So that's something we can pick up, and maybe when we go back to shuls, we'll pray much better. I wouldn't like to say that's why Hashem's doing this. Again, maybe prophets can tell you that. I certainly can't. But can we learn to, again, this is about us. When we're in these situations, we do have to become greater people. We have to become greater at praying. We have to now become the community. We have to become bastions of chesed and not leave it to others to do it for us, kindness. We have to become those people who no longer don't live in the self-pity, high-rush world and leave good for others to do. We have to all take responsibility ourselves. So I hope that answers your question, Benjamin. I hope I answered it correctly. I'm sorry, I know there aren't tones and voices to these questions, so I can only answer to the best of my ability. I hope that has answered the question. Okay, any other questions? Every time I try to switch off now, there's been another question, so I'm not going to switch off now. I'll wait to see if somebody else has something as well they want to add or ask as well. As thank you for these questions, because they're raising points which I hadn't thought to raise. I really appreciate them, and I'm sure everybody else does as well. I can see a lot of people have stayed on the conversation for these questions, so feel free. And please, by the way, don't feel your question's a silly question. I've learned with British audiences especially, there's a bit of a tendency to think if I put it in print, everyone will see it and it might be a silly question. No question in this moment right now is a silly question. These are all, any question that bothers you is likely to be bothering a lot of people right now, and probably most people will be very, very grateful to see your question, and I certainly will be grateful to have it. So if there's any others, I'll take them. If not, then I may actually, I think it's about the 7th time I've been saying goodbye, but you know what, each time I give another blessing, so the more blessings, you know, the Gemara says that even a person who's not so great, if they give you a bit of a blessing, it's also something, you know, so let's all bless each other. And again, blessing is not a substitute for taking care of one another and isolating as we need to and doing all the good that we can do, but let's also bless each other with health. Let's think about, and by the way, when I talk about thinking about people who will need us in these times, let me just add a few others because it has come to my mind. I mean, I've reached out now to 1 or 2 doctors and people in the medical world. They also appreciate our support and caring for them, right? There's also, you know, you may be like I am, a charity which until now has had people who donate a lot of money to us who right now are in distress. They need us to care for them at this moment. You know, it's not just it is people also who are nervous of losing their jobs, and will the government funding cover them, or are they contractors and so on. They also need us to reach out. There might be charities we can put people in touch with. There might be charities we can reach out to volunteer to help. And there might be charities where we know somebody who could benefit from the help of the charity who might not go to them themselves. There's a lot of ways we can be thinking of others right now. Avi asked, will there be any halachic ramifications to our Pesach this year? There probably will. Just as there may be certain areas that we're normally a bit strict on, they could be a bit more lenient. I'll just give you an example. Many of us try not to sell actual chametz. I think this year already a lot of big rabbis have come out and said, don't be clever, you know, don't, because that means you're going to have to panic buy and bring more food. Be lenient, sell your chametz. There are going to be different things that we, you know, another example is when you buy or have vessels that are new or things you normally dip it in a mikveh. Obviously, we're not going to be going to kalim mikvahs right now, so you're going to find other ways around that and so on. So there's going to be things that are different. I think the hechsherim are going to start coming out with which products we go sometimes super strict, like you know, but you can actually assume don't have chametz in and so on. Obviously, Pesach is the strictest time of the Jewish year. But that said, we're going to have to see where that might be a little bit of leeway. There's obviously going to be people who keep Pesach, but their parents don't. In some cases, the parents have chametz all over the house. What are they going to do? We're going to have to work on those different solutions and so on. And in general, there's going to be a lot of questions asked halachically for what's called shas hadachak, time of extreme pressure. And again, in the Western world, we haven't had a time of extreme pressure for a long, long time where leniencies can be used, and we're going to learn. I'm not a big enough halachic expert here, but they're going to be, a lot of them are going to be weighing in on all sorts of scenarios and where we can find leniencies and where we can't. In biblical law, you usually can't. There are times in rabbinic law where you can, and we're going to learn about those. So those are just 2 examples off the top of my head. Avi, obviously, we have to listen out and keep asking the questions as they come up. And again, Pesach is a very good example. Here's another good example of helping one another. There's going to be a lot of people making Pesach for the very first time this year. There's going to be people who are normally away on holidays, haven't made Pesach for years and years. So again, nice thing, make little WhatsApp groups, make groups together where people can share ideas and advice. How do you make Pesach with all the kids at home? And what happens if one parent's trying to hold on to their job? And let's get groups together and just, I know there are already quite a lot forming that can really help each other out in terms of giving simple things like advice, recipes, simple shortcuts, you know, all these sorts of things to really, really help one another. What I will tell you is amazing. The Jewish nation was formed in isolation. The night of Seder night was a night of isolation. There was a Mageifa, there was a plague outside, and every Jew had to be in their home. And in the home, we created the Jewish nation. So our Seder nights are going to be pretty much us and our families. And again, let's also think of those who are really, really in isolation. They may not be people who lack health, although that may be too. They're going to have 3 days Yom Tov. Let's think about them. Can we get them kits? Can we think of reading material for them? Let's think, what can we do to help their Pesach be better for them? Can we prepare food for them and so on? But also there may be singles out there who are healthy but not able to go to a Seder somewhere. You know, there may be people who have become religious in recent years and don't really know how to run a Seder, or just traditional want to run a Seder, or people who've never run a Seder. There's lots of people we're going to all be able to help. Again, you don't need to wait for rabbis or others to reach out to them. If we know people like that, everyone should take it upon themselves to be the rabbis, be the educators, be the to whatever extent we can, and to volunteer, get in touch with the charities, get in touch with everyone, and also the creativity that's going to come out inevitably now in the next few weeks. So probably the first few weeks are going to be struggle, because humans struggle to adapt to new things. Within 3-4 weeks, we're going to get used to this. And a few weeks after that, we're going to get really, really good at it. And there's going to be a lot of creativity, a lot of creative energy, and so many ways we can do good. When you've discovered one, share it. Let people know. It's not a time for humility. If you find a way to really help somebody in your area, to help your elderly person in your area, or someone isolated, share it with others who can do the same thing as well. Share it with a charity that you know that can help their volunteers do the same thing, and so on. Okay, I think we've crossed the 45-minute mark. So now I'm going to finish the way I finished several times. One sec, Jamie. How do you approach those people still making minyanim, having learning programs despite it being banned, and now it's an Aveira? I don't know what to say. I really, really don't. Thank God anyone I know in that situation has now fully listened. I hope by now it's finished. I hope everyone's learned the lesson. If they haven't, I don't know what to say. You're allowed to report to authorities? Of course you can. This is life and death right now. But to whatever extent you can get in touch with them, or you know someone who can, you've got to stop it. I know in the area where I am, I think as far as I know, all the minyanim shut already. The Shabbos, I heard in Manchester there was still, a lot of minyanim have shut. Again, let's not label communities. Many did. Not everyone picks up the news at the same time. Not every city's experiencing things at the same time. But a religious doctor went round, got driven by a non-Jew round into every shul that was still open. Thankfully, there weren't that many, and banged on and told them I'm a doctor. From what I understand, I wasn't there, but this is real life and death, and hopefully succeeded in getting the message across. This again, it's not just in the minyanim. Like I said, we saw in Snowdon, we've seen pictures all over the world. Different communities, Jewish and non-Jewish, are reacting at different times, but we absolutely have to communicate as best we can. This really, really, really is pikuach nefesh. Just one communication. I think in England the death rate's about 140, 150 a day at the moment. Italy was there about 2.5 weeks ago. It's now over 3,000 in Italy. That means that even if we all go into isolation right now, the virus has already gone out there to the point where, please God, this won't be the case. But naturally, is going to be 3,000 or so dying a day in 2 weeks. Now, you just got to tell that to people. If you're talking about people in schools, tell them about the person who died tell them about these things. These are real. I think people are getting the message. I think it will take different time. The government was upset today with people, taking parks and things a bit too frivolously. They had to shut the pubs. It's not just our community, but wherever we are, we have responsibility to really, really push people and really make people aware of just how serious it is and just how important it is. Okay. So I think I hope I've addressed all the points that have come up, and I hope, again, to sum up for those who weren't there all the way through, what I spoke about this is a very serious situation. At the same time, being calm in it, understanding it's not World War II, however grave and serious it is. I don't think anybody's projecting 50 million deaths like World War II. It's something we are going to get to the other side, the vast, vast majority of us. There will, please God, there won't be, but there may well be losses and tragedies, and we're going to have to be there for the bereaved, and we're going to have to be there for other people who suffer, whether it's loss of job, whether it's loss of status in the community who was the great giver and has now lost everything, whether it's the bar mitzvah boy or bar mitzvah who prepared and now can't do their bar mitzvah and can't even necessarily get a sefer Torah to the house anymore, whether it's the wedding, there's all sorts of ways, person who lost a loved one and can't sit a proper shiva for them. All these things are going to be there. We need to be there for all those people. But within ourselves, certainly amongst those, I'm talking not, within ourselves, being calm, understanding for us and for our children, certainly a case where there's no health risks within the immediate family, there's really good reasons to be calm and exude that calm, not to let ourselves spend all day on the news getting more panic or letting us spread panic in front of those around us. The voice of calm is viral. The voice of calm is really viral, as is the voice of panic. It spreads from brain to brain. The voice of goodness is viral. Let it spread. It's a moment for us to become generals now. Everyone to be a general. Don't leave it to the rabbis to educate. If you can educate, do it yourself. Don't leave it to someone else out there to do all the kindness and to give the charity. We can do that too. Call up the charities, call up the elderly, call up the people who need our help. Let's become great givers. Don't panic if we don't, if our house is falling apart, but to whatever extent we can bring greatness out and out in the people around us. Let's do it. And as I said, and I've said the blessing now many times, let's bless and pray for one another, pray for the whole world. Think about what we share in common and think that goodness should long outlast all of this, that we should all be well and get through it, be financially well off and get through it, be emotionally well off and get through it, and that the goodness that we're able to generate within ourselves and others should long outlast this and make this world a better place forever. Thank you for joining me, and I hope this has been a benefit to you, and I hope you'll be able to spread the messages and the goodness out there to the world in general, and we can all together make this world a better place. Thank you so much.